Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm so excited to talk to you all well, it's afternoon now. Okay, it's officially afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm just really delighted to share with you this third quarter update of what we've been doing. Coincidentally, my tenure as officially as CEO started this quarter in the third quarter in January. And so we've done a lot since then. And so let me get started. Okay. Okay. I'm wondering, my computer froze for a minute. So, just to give you some context of where Build is now, and this slide, growth, maturity, momentum. Build back in 2020, we were a $6 million organization, only 75 employees, and we served about 1,200 young people. You fast forward to last year, and we're at 22 million, 220 employees, and serving well over 6,000 youth and their families. And for that to take place, that meant that we grew exceedingly fast. So, uh, that was largely tied to a lot of work we did around mental health support, expanding our education programs, but also with our prevention services. And so that took a lot for us, and we grew really fast. And so the work just keeps continuing and it's evolving. So when you think about the work we're continuing to do with upstream, that's our violence prevention villages that we're doing inside of schools, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Expanding education and career pathways, which is another important initiative. And I love to say this, that in the years that Build has been doing our work, we've always did things to keep young people engaged, but also give them opportunity. And we've always done summer employment and any opportunity that we could pay them, get them some exposure to the workforce. Uh, but now there's an intentionality that we have about making sure our kids have a clear path for where they're going and what they're doing so that they can build a future. But this also breaks cycles. When we talk about violence, many times what we don't consider is that violence is a problem. It's a problem, but actually it's more of a symptom of a bigger problem. There's systemic poverty. The economics, status of many of our participants many times fall at the poverty level. And we see that in any neighborhood where you see high rates of violence, you also see high rates of unemployment, but also poverty. And so we want to make sure that we're able to help our young people get a foothold into a future where they can enter the middle class, that they can have better than living wage jobs, that they're educated. Because the education is also key determinant to mental health, for physical well-being, but also opportunity. And then the other part that we've worked on is make sure we preserve our culture and credibility. As we've grown, we never wanted to lose the essence of who Build is. Build is I love to say, we're a big grassroots organization. We still are connected with the blocks that we serve, with the people that are able to just walk through our doors. We're accessible and we're responsive. And for in conversations about our growth as well, for myself coming in as CEO, I have some operational priorities. Number one, we grew so fast that our system had to catch up. We've been doing so much so quickly that we had to make sure that we shored up and strengthen our internal system. So it starts with communication and collaboration. And that's even internally. It's easy to have programs. And when you have programs, they tend to end up operating as individual entities and, great success. And we're able to work across our programs. But my intention is that we're doing so purposefully, that that's designed from the ground up. And then also, telling a story about what we do means we have to capture the data. So better documentation and also capturing our best practices. What do we do well? That way, we're able to replicate and continue to do these programs, but maintain the quality and not have a drop off in service. Also strengthening back office operations. So when you think about Kirsten and a development team and our facilities and our operations team and our finance team, all those things have to be operating efficiently so we could take care of the more than 6,000 young people and families that we're serving. And then in light of what we're experiencing in this world right now, it's important that we are able to diversify our revenue. Public dollars were an important part of our growth. State, federal, city, county are important to us. But we're also seeing the impact of what's happening with our federal government and how there's a trickle down effect that we're going to start to see in the coming years. And so it's important that we look at what are our opportunities that we could generate or create pathways for revenue for our organization that could not just help us survive, but to continue to thrive and not have a drop off in how we serve our community and our young people. Somebody going to say something?
No, go ahead, Bradley.
Okay. And then another part of that is efficiency, grant utilization. Working on all of these systems will help us better use the grants that we're getting so that we're able to really serve, that we're not leaving money on the table, and that every dollar is really going. That's a life attached to that. There's individuals who are impacted. And so, in thinking about the quarter, we've done many things. There's so many things we couldn't put them all into this presentation. There's been a focus on entrepreneurship. I talked about the importance of economics and economic development and breaking the cycle of poverty. One of the things that I've been more intentional about is bringing in exposure to entrepreneurship and business development. For those who don't understand, on the west side of Chicago, particularly in Austin and some of the adjoining neighborhoods, there are very few of what I call indigenous businesses, businesses that are owned by the people who live in the community. There are also so many opportunities to serve the community through commerce, through business, that are unrealized because many people just don't know what's possible for them. So we have a partnership with Sunshine Enterprises. We have a community business academy where they're nurturing and guiding through a 12-week program aspiring entrepreneurs who actually have a business concept and idea that's more than just ideation, and helping them carry that forward to create a solid business plan and position themselves for funding, for them to be able to go out and get capital to really launch and expand their businesses. We've also done school field trips. So we've invited schools across the West Side. They actually do field trip experiences here at Build on our campus to enjoy all of the things that we do here. And then again, team jobs. We show a picture of our farm because we have a core of young people who are actually the ones who are cultivating that farm. They're doing the planting. They're learning actually the science of agriculture. And so these are pathways into careers as well. And then we also do things that are tied to the community and the culture. So for instance, each month, where many months have themes, for instance, Black History Month is one of the examples. We always decorate, do a showcase. We invite community members in, and this is important. This is a big part of us continuing to maintain that connection. When I say that we're still a big grassroots organization, it's important that we maintain connection and welcome community members in and help them enjoy what we're doing. And so from our family nights to youth programs to school field trips, and then also one of our annual events, the Black Table event that we do, where we invite leaders from all across the city who will sit at a table with a young person who actually has questions that they ask these leaders. How did you get where you are? Many of these leaders come from the same blocks, the same streets, and some of the same experiences as our young people. And what they are able to do is inspire them to hope. But like I said at the gala, hope with legs. How do you really get there? How do you really do it? What do you have to go through? And how can I be of support to you? We also, for spring break, we had 60 plus kids in camp. We had over 40 kids in after school matters jobs. And our camps actually had different things from sports to arts to theater, and also the history of hip hop. So they actually were immersed in things that they were interested in. And these camps are actually designed from feedback from our kids. We also did college tours. We went to Wisconsin, Kentucky, and Arizona, Atlanta. And we had some great partnerships that made that possible. And what's so important about this is, again, the exposure. We have to keep doing these things because our young people need to see it, they need to know it. And it helps them understand what's important for them. And all
And
of, go
oh,
ahead.
and Bradley, sorry to interrupt. Before we go on, we just want to say thanks to the baccalaureates who are on this
That's right.
call, who were able to facilitate an introduction to the president of University of Kentucky, who really had a very special time talking with our potential first gen builders.
Yeah, that's right. It's right there shown in that picture. And that was amazing. And that's a great experience for our young people because you know, what I see about many of the things we do, it centers around our young people and it helps them see that they are important, that they do have value and they're cared for. And what that does is ignite this spark in them of what's possible, while simultaneously helping them feel also accountable to the people who are mentoring them and supporting them and guiding them. And that leads to community outreach and connection. You can see here, over 1,600 residents have engaged across 11 community events at our campus. We have a constant foot traffic here. There were 900 children and families welcome to our family-centered celebrations. We want to make sure families are involved because we know that as much as we do, they still have to go back home. And many times the parents need supports just as much as our kids do, especially in this day and age. It truly does take a village to raise a child. Parents need support in this world with everything's going on. And then also externally on the blocks, we connected with over 150 individuals and we connected them to critical resources through neighborhood pop-ups. And we talk about critical resources, that could be connections to services, connections to mental health support, connections to getting health care, connections to employment, connections with our programs and services. And many of these, you can't understate that there's such a potential of really saving a life. And that's like that goes beyond anything that I can imagine. That's the value of our work. And then also access to justice. We've expanded, we do more work with restorative justice, also civic involvement. So voting drives. We know that to really change things, you have to be involved in the system itself that creates the policies, that creates the changes, so you have a voice in it. So civic education is a part of that and also outreach partnerships. We've gone to Springfield. We just had our youth council. They were down in Springfield and they were able to present to Speaker Welch, and he listened. And that was important for them to bring issues that are important to our community and to them and to their futures. We also had a youth restorative justice conference. And to my knowledge, that was the first of its kind that I've ever seen in our city. And then on another level, we've helped over 60 individuals help them get their records expunged. Many have had infractions against the law and they have these things that are preventing them from getting employment. But 60 record expungements are the key to housing, to employment, and being able to serve and care for your family and your community. And then also, I'll point out, and I mentioned earlier, our growth in our upstream initiatives. When we say upstream, we're talking about common sense approaches that prevent a young person from ever getting involved in these riskier or more negative behaviors. It reduces the risk of them getting involved, being in the justice system, or any of these other pathways that they can take and helping them find a path that's positive for them and for their futures. And so for us to do that, we've launched, we're in the second year of a model of the violence prevention villages, and that's embedded teams inside of schools here. So we have three schools right now with a full team there, more than 10 staff. And then we have five that has a partial model, three to five schools with teams that are partial model. And with that work, that's like therapists and mentors, after school programs, advocates, but also care coordinators who are working in three directions with the kid, with the school, and with the parents at home. And that's invaluable. So that everybody's on the same page, but that child is at the center of it so that they get the best life possible.
Mhm. And Bradley, sir, we had a request to talk a little more about upstream, downstream, which I know you're doing. But for reference, I've put the original quote from Archbishop Desmond Tutu in the chat about what we mean when we say upstream.
Yeah. So upstream, like I mentioned, that's pouring into our young people from kindergarten through 12th grade, so that we know that we want them to be able to be educated. We want them to be have social emotional regulation. We want them to be sound in heart and mind and spirit. We want them to have a solid foundation, but also prepare to enter the workforce or that next stage in their life. And so that means the common sense methods of the supports that they will need academically, socially, emotionally, but also spiritually in some ways, but also helping the parents as well, so that even at home, they're able to do the same things to support that young person. And from research, all that demonstrates is that when you pour those things in, it doesn't guarantee that a kid won't do something different. All of us know that they have their own minds. However, it reduces the likelihood of them falling off in the wrong direction. Now, downstream is the work that we do, like intervention services, even some of the mental health services, is after the fact. It's after they've experienced a trauma. It's after they failed in school or after they're out on the blocks or in the streets. Now we're interceding, and now you have to do a lot of work to undo and also mitigate and help them have coping strategies to deal with it. So that's intensive work. What I like to say is that downstream is more like the ER and that clinic that you go to when you are sick. Uh, but upstream, that's the healthcare system. And that's that whole comprehensive well-being that you could have that prevents you from ever getting any of these diseases or things like that. And so it's really maintaining health and helping to preserve or to create healthful environment. And so upstream and downstream, I know I said that in a long way, but I think that that's what I look at it, at it as. What do you think, Kirsten? Is that good?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Please feel free to ask additional follow-up questions. But yeah, that covers it for sure.
And we talk about downstream. We talk about downstream again. And so launching our career boot camp with our education and career pathways team. We have cohorts of 30. We did our inaugural one during the third quarter. We actually are in the midst of one right now. And this is unwraps. So this helps young people who are not in school, they're not working, but they're 18 to 24 years old. And it's helping them connect to where do you want to go next? But it not only connects them, it prepares them to be successful in it. So there's exposure. We have guest speakers. We have panels. They actually have real experiences, a day in the life of. Recently, did a day in the life of a scientist. And they actually did experiments. They watched videos. They've done a number of different hands-on experiences as well as field trips as well. And we just had a great graduation for that first cohort. And then the gala. On the 17th, we did the Build the Future Gala. It was such an amazing time. I know I spent the weekend, feeling like I was on cloud nine and thinking about the impact. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me was the importance of the little things that are so important to every day to help us keep moving forward without letting the big things like what's happening, like the war or what happened with Medicaid and SNAP. These are all big, big problems that are taking place. But in the meantime, build. We still have to continue to do the small things that we've been showing up for the mentoring, for answering the calls, for hosting the events, for being there and being a space and being a place to continue serving our communities and our families. And that has been invaluable because it's those small things that are going to change the big things. And so we know that that's the investment that we have to make, and we have to continue to do that and push through no matter what. And so, great time.
Yeah, so again, please feel free to put questions in the chat or just ask them directly. I do have a couple that came in and some others that were emailed Bradley. The first one is, how are you doing? This was your first official quarter as the official full-time CEO. How is it different from your time as interim?
Well, I'm good at analogies. I would say the difference is when my wife was my girlfriend, and then we got married. Uh, Still love her. It's just different. And what I found is that the commitment and that what I decide and what I do is important because it impacts the whole organization. But what I say is the biggest difference is understanding just the value of our organization. I always did, but now even more so because I get behind the curtain more and really understand just what it takes to make this go. And so the difference is that I know and understand that this is not a full-time job. It's a calling and it's a commitment and it's service. And so I feel that even more, but also to know that the staff and the people who do our work and the people that we serve, how valuable they are. And that, I want to make sure that we're able to continue doing that. So I carry that.
Yes, Laura, I see you. Your question?
I'm typing, but I guess I could just
Yeah.
talk. I am just, can you remind me how much of your annual budget comes or came from the federal government and how that has changed and how that impacts you?
Mhm.
I can take that one if you want, Bradley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have our budget is approximately I want to say 40% public grants. And so that's about maybe 13 million. And we have that includes federal and state and county. And interestingly enough, we found that any changes from the federal have, as Bradley mentioned, had a real ripple effect. And we did have in the fall and this spring have about 3 grants programs just absolutely canceled on us. And they were all actually city grants because of city budget restrictions. And so we've lost about 3.5 million in public funding this fiscal year. And the rest, I will say though, there's been a slightly broader impact than that because the rest of our public grants from the city and the state and the county have been feeling the extra strain of bureaucracy, like the timing it's been take to get the reimbursements has stretched from a few weeks to a few months to maybe 5 or 6 months. And that kind of delay of funding flow has obviously very serious impacts on our cash flow. It changes our accounting across the fiscal years, and it requires a lot more fancy footwork from our finance team and also just a lot more care and with all of our back office operations and our staff.
Mhm.
So we've made up a lot of ground with sort of new funding streams, but the impact is certainly there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so I also see, Emily, you asked what are a couple of the new revenue streams you're looking at to diversify. I know, well, one of the things is we have to do, we're doing more intensive work around individual and private donations. So we have to build up more outreach and just more support in that direction. I'm also looking at internally what are our opportunities. Like, I'm looking at a build store. We have tons of merch and things like that that we could look at. That's one way. And then, Kirsten, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that one thing that is a really good, a positive implication of the strengths of our program. Like I will say, the strength of the violence prevention village teams that are embedded in schools is that that's a very promising model, and we have promising results from that, which means we've been able to bring that story to a lot of private foundations and a lot of private individuals who are very interested in education and school quality, which has always been, of course, in very closely related to violence prevention, but I think we've been able to show that it's really a mutual benefit, that when a school's quality improves by working with the sort of the youth in need, it meets both goals, of preventing violence, of maintaining upstream health, and it also has these positive ripple effects in the school. And so I think we've been taking that story to a new sector of private donors and private foundations. And I think we've also been looking for ways for a lot of these school-based violence prevention programs to align with new CPS programs that do have existing funding, things like that. So I think we're um, looking for new spaces to that we newly align with, if that answers your question.
And Jason,
Go ahead.
okay. Oh, I was just going to say we're getting that VPV pilot evaluated because we know that when you have it evaluated and that becomes a gold standard that actually opens up more doors for us. I envision that we'll be able to use that program will, like Kirsten said, it'll open many other doors and avenues for us as a promising initiative. Then because schools and communities are really needing their support. It's such a common sense approach, and it's approachable and it's doable. So I look at that as an amazing opportunity for us. I
Mhm.
think.
There's a question about what is Build's greatest funding needs right now?
Hmm. Well, I would say in general, yeah, I'll say general ops, but I will say that many of our programs and the things that we do, for instance, we'll have a grant that funds an after school program. And as we're working with the families, we're finding out there's housing insecurity, they need food, sometimes utility bills have to be paid. There's a lot of different things that wrap around us delivering the services. Because as I mentioned, there's a lot of things that have been cut. And more cuts are coming down the road in May as well. And so, for us to adequately support and serve our community, we're going to need to be able to have a flexibility to provide and well, not to provide, but to support their needs and get them on strong footing. And then also with a lot of our programs and activities that we do, whether it's the entrepreneurship, business development, the career pathways, we also help with tuition and things like that to help fund them to get, help support the cost for trainings and academic support.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because when you talk about the reductions in public funding, Build is still a very strong candidate for public funding because we've done this, because we've historically invested in our back office and we're able to maintain grant compliance at a time when a lot of other smaller organizations have a lot of trouble doing that. And so we are still a good candidate for these public fundings, but what we're finding is that the award amounts, of course, are either the program is canceled or the award amounts are much smaller, or they're committed for 2 years instead when they used to be 4, things like that. And so when the award amounts get smaller, usually the way the funding agency handles that is they limit the kinds of expenses that can be covered. So yes, a lot of those emergency expenses Bradley talks about are mentioned. We find that all of our youth, so many of our youth programs will not fund food, for example. That food is just always forbidden. Sometimes clothing is forbidden, so we can't sort of buy people camp T-shirts, when they come to our summer camps. And there are sort of small things like that, which have been shaved off a lot of those public programs. And so when we get unrestricted dollars, it's almost like we can fill all of those those hundreds and hundreds of gaps that are starting to appear in all the public funding. And so I think that's why another reason why unrestricted funds are very helpful. I will also say that with the recovery funds from ARPA that are basically ending this year, we use that to cover a lot of our street outreach and violence intervention teams. And so that funding is definitely going to be, we're always looking for replacement funds there. Yes, and so another question, a couple have come in that are similar, which is how are you finding Build's experience with the times today compare with our peer organizations? And how is Build's experience similar and how is it different?
Well, I was just on a call right before this, and there's an initiative that we're a part of, Scaling Community Violence for a Safer Chicago, or called SE2, and we're part of a collaborative. And I was talking with the executive director of another organization, and before everybody came on, and our experiences are similar. They've lost federal dollars and the experience, and then with the complications of existing fundings and how complicated they are to write for, to report on, is causing a burden. So this is an environmental problem. I've heard the same thing with a few other organizations. So there's an environmental struggle that's happening right now. What I was able to do, and what I just initiated, matter of fact, this was the day before yesterday, I've convened the executive directors on the West Side so we could come together and start to talk, not just to commiserate, but to get an understanding of what's the problems we're facing, how do we work together, but also how do we advocate together as well. So I think that where Build is strong is we have a long history. Like Kristen said, we took the time and we had I guess we've been fortunate and blessed that we built a strong back office and a strong infrastructure. Of course, we always have to do better. And so we have a long history, but we have a lot of know-how, and we're used to fighting and being scrappy. So we've learned how to do without, and we know how to do with. And so we're in a position now where, because we have our sound practices, like Kirsten said, we're able to be a conduit through like government agencies who need a place to safely put the dollars to help support and even be passed through. And so where we're good at is we're able to be a support to the community and to the other organizations as a backbone, but also as a conduit of support.
And related, there's a note in the chat that says Chicago has a lot of wonderful youth and violence intervention organizations. How does Build distinguish itself in services also, I imagine?
Well, I want to say, I don't think that I think we distinguish ourselves, and I think it's what we've learned is our secret sauce, is that there's no wrong door to come to Build. We are what I want to say, there's no other organization that I know of in the city that has the comprehensive wraparound services. So that a young person could be in an after school program, but still their mom could get mental health support, that will help them solve a problem, or have a team that actually goes on the block where a kid lives when there's been an incident to support the neighbors and the whole block and community. So we differentiate ourselves. We're visible, but we actually are engaged in doing it. And then the other part is that Bill, we have such a great long-standing relationship across the city. So we're a go-to agency. So when it's time to talk about or support youth involvement or to advise on, we get calls from the county and the city all the time. And so we actually have youth who are part of a citywide youth council as well, that they were called on. We were, sought out by the city as well. So I think we distinguish ourselves in a lot of ways, but it's our flexibility. There's no wrong door. Plus, we do some really cool events and activities that are free, that engage our young people and our families, monthly.
Yeah, the combination of reach and depth of wraparound services and community credibility is and the quality of the people, I think, is really is always been built special sauce, as Bradley says.
Kirsten, a
Um,
quick question.
Yeah.
Um, and I recognize that every child is critical, um, but with 6,000 um, clients, I'm going to call them, that we have, clearly some are low touch and some are very high touch.
mhm.
And I don't know how you'd break them down, but um, I would guess the majority are low touch and the minority are high touch. Is that right so far?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. It's about
So it's
2,300, I think, are the highest touch.
the highest touch.
Mhm.
So do we have, if we're out fighting for new money or renewing existing money, is it more important to us to win on the low touch or the high touch, or we think of them as the same?
Hmm. You, well, I'll start with John. My approach is for us to even differentiate between high touch or low touch, we have to connect with them. And many times, even those who present initially as low touch, once you build a relationship, that could quickly evolve. And so I think the story is around the needs for our young people. I love to explain to people, what does any human being need to thrive? And when you pair that with the real experiences of communities that have been historically disinvested, lack, under-resourced, that have tons of these, variables or determinants that impact their lives, it's really hard to distinguish initially. But I do say we will point out over and over again the needs of those high touch because that consumes a large part of, our resources. So it's both and. I don't know if that answers your question. Kirsten, did you want to add anything?
Well, first, I wanted to also just give some more accurate numbers. In our annual report, it says 3,400 actually, 3,410 are sort of engaged with outreach, and it's 2,690 that are enrolled and connected and have a specific care plan. I think Bradley's right that we don't necessarily differentiate between those two segments when we're planning program, because I do think the programs we create tend to treat them both. Like if you to get to the 2,690, you sort of have a mentor, you're involved with case management, you're enrolled in several programs, we know who you are, we have your full-blown contact information. And it's almost like everyone needs to come through that. The no wrong door includes the 3,410 on top of that, with which have the lighter touch, that's basically the ones who are just starting to get to know us, that we've engaged them once or twice, they've come to events, they've dropped in, they've made contact with Build staff, and that's kind of them coming in the door initially. And then the 2,690 is when they're here, we have connections, we're engaging with them. And so it isn't as if there's almost like two different tiers of service. It's just kind of like, where are you in the process of engaging with Build? And so I think when we're looking at funding, Bradley has always said we don't sacrifice quality of service, and we prioritize the needs of our young people. And I don't think we've had to make that distinction yet. I think we continue with our programs and um,
And the money that was cut back from the grants, from the
yeah.
public grants, there's no pattern to those when you think about low touch, high touch, or they've been skewed in one direction or the other.
Interesting. I think not necessarily, because I think the main ones that we've lost have been, gosh, have most of the ones that have suffered the most have been the ones that have allowed us to find new youth, right? And it's like, for example, the SCAN program was one that was lost from the city, and that was really our teams being out there in communities and finding youth who are directly sort of street involved and trying to engage them initially and bring them in. That that work has really that's some of our most crucial work. That's how we find the youth who are most in need. And so I don't but that's not work we would ever stop doing. And so it's almost like the there are certain channels that used to be supported that now are less supported, and some of the programs in schools, we still have had to fund that largely privately, although we're really trying to get some public funding for that as well. And so it's almost like there is a differentiation in what's been hit, but it's more about like where are they in the build process rather than what their needs are. If that
From
makes
an
sense.
organizational and from a kid point of view, um, the program that's a new program that's just been launched or is going to be launched and has to be cut back because of the cutback on the grants is less painful to the organization than if it's an existing program that really is, well embedded and doing a great job,
Mhm.
and you lose that. So it's good to hear that so far that hasn't happened.
And
Yeah.
John, what I'll say too is that even if it was something that like we're going to be straining to figure out, the participants, they won't know a difference. They're still being served. They still have that mentor. We still, we figure it out. We figure it out. Over and over again, we've done that.
Mhm. There has been, I think where there is a difference is with launching new programs, just as you're saying, John. Like, for
Hmm.
example, the new career bootcamp programs that did launch this year, those were made possible by a very large multi-year private investment from a foundation that believes strongly in that program. And we know we have 3 solid years of funding for it. And that was a major strategic priority. We're thrilled about that. And so that's why we know we're able to sort of launch that program as an extension of the college and career pathways work we've been doing. I think we have given the caution to staff to consider growth very carefully, and to focus on serving the youth that we have to. So if there has to be, because we have been growing at such a clip that we want to make sure that we sustain the connections and the quality of our current services for sure. So I think that's one thing that's different from years past when we had more room to do more experimentation and more kind of ambitious expansion. So we're
Yeah,
definitely
well,
putting a closer eye on that.
for organizations in general, when you grow that fast, it's not the worst thing in the world that you have a period that is a little calmer for everybody to, get everything in order. So I'm sure that's happening, and it makes going forward a lot easier than trying to play whack-a-mole.
That's so true.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, I'm keeping an eye on the clock. Are there any other questions before we wrap up and get you on to your 1 o'clock? I've gone through all of mine.
I just want to shout out Emily's chat. Yeah, the secret sauce. That would be a great shirt.
Pecky's Barbecue would come after us. Well, that would be great. But again, thank you. So I'll let Bradley say the final farewell, but thank you so much again to everyone here. I just want to say, as one of the development officers, that all of the work we do is because of this community of donors. Even for decades, Build has been special and been able to distinguish itself with quality and breadth of services because of this community of supporters. You've been here for us, and all of it is because of your support. So thank you so much again for being here. And Bradley, any other last words?
I just want to again reiterate the thank you. We cannot do it without you. It's that support that helps us fill in between and continue to do the work, to show up. Like I said before, that full quote was just because the big things are happening does not mean the small things stop. And so you enable us to keep doing those small things that eventually actually topple over those big things. And so I really appreciate you and thank you so much.